Welcome back to the channel, guys. I hope you're all doing amazing today. I've tried to, however, record this video now probably 15 times. For whatever reason, I just have a ton of information I want to share, but I don't want to go all over the place, so we're going to keep this a little more concise. What I want to share with you guys is my two most valuable teams flat out inside of Raid at this moment. Today, we got the addition of Chaos Dust and Chaos Powder on stage 25 specifically of Sand Devil and Shogun, which has made these two teams basically mandatory for me. I actually built stage 25 Shogun this morning because before that I did stage 24 because Newt is strong on stage 24 and is weak affinity on stage 25. He's possible to be used, but really it just makes things way too complicated and I'm not interested in doing that. So this is my Shogun stage 25 team, and then I'm going to show you guys my Sand Devil stage 25 team right after this. But this one's been 100% consistent. It's about 45 seconds on average, and the champion builds are right over here. After doing this, I want to talk about my opinions on the implementation of the dust as well as the powder. But for now, I just want to give you guys the actual builds of my champions. So Kymar is sitting at the speed. This is his build right here. His skills, he's fully booked, and his masteries are over here. Next up, we have Mithrala. They're her masteries. This is her gear, and these are her stats. So really just shoot for these stats, try to get them as close to my numbers as possible. I'm not going to go into deep detail as to why the speeds are where they are or the accuracy is where it's at, but try to get your numbers as close to mine as possible. Specifically the speed and the accuracy numbers, that's going to be very important. Sets like Reflex are very nice to have, but if you can't fit them, it's not the end of the world. It may just take a little bit longer for your runs, but it's really no problem. Unless it's something like Stone Skin, that is important. So that is needed if it's something like Stone Skin. So Cold Heart, here are her masteries, her skills. It is nice to have a high blessing on her. Kind of helps keep the Phantom Shogun's stacks at bay because the High Awakening is better for her on those stages. High Awakening on any of your champions is great. So there's Cold Heart, and then Gnarlhorn's right after that. Gnarlhorn, you got to make sure he is tanky. Make sure his speed is close to where mine's at, and then make sure his crit damage is the highest on the team. That is going to make your life possible, your life in the Shogun possible, because without that, you're just gonna get wrecked. That's really all there is to say about that. So as far as the presets for the Shogun 25 team, this is it. I believe you can use a different champion besides Ninja. It's gonna take a little bit longer, not a huge deal, but I believe you can use a different champion. So there's Gnarlhorn, and here is Prince Kymar. So that is the Shogun stage 25 team. And let's go over here and take a look at my Sand Devil stage 25 team, which is actually somewhat under construction. I've farmed about 200-ish Shogun today and trying to re-roll a pair of boots to get Rio over into toxic gear so that this can be a little bit more consistent. It's around about 95 to 96% consistent currently, but I really want to push it to like 97, 98%, maybe even 100%. But currently, if I miss decreased defense, it gets a little bit sketchy, a little bit shaky. So I want to invest in these teams and make it as close to 100% as possible. Now, when I say that these teams are my most valuable at this moment in time, is my gear is pretty decent on my account. If I get better ascensions on my gear is going to be a lot better. So these teams right here, this Shogun team and this Sand Devil team, are going to be the teams that really unlock crazy stat potentials. Well, crazy in comparison to what farming would give me. There's some upgrades I can definitely make, but it's going to cost far more energy to get an upgrade from a dungeon versus switching an ascension from flat defense to, say, crit rate, crit damage, or something along those lines. I'm sure you guys understand that, and I'm sure you follow along. But these dungeons are definitely worth it for me to go in, get the best gear on these champions, get the best builds possible for what I'm doing, so these runs become as consistent as possible. With that said, it so happens that while I'm talking about this run seems to be failing. It's getting a little bit weird right now. If we can get Godseeker to res, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know why the Sand Devil's doing what the Sand Devil's doing. I don't know why my champions are doing what my champions are doing. But this run today, before recording, has been very, very consistent. But whenever I turn on the recording, apparently it's like, let's go ahead and fail some. We got the bash. A little bit of a hard time saying that there. But we had the bash coming out. Kymar coming up. Was actually horrible because, wait, no, was it? I don't know. Does Kymar have his reset coming up? Honestly, I just want to skip past this and not even worry about it because Siffies might be sleeping in just a moment. We got that there. We got champion res. Kymar coming back. We may actually do this. If Kymar resets soon, it might actually be possible. The Feasting Swarm comes up in 2 turns. If Kymar resets here, it may actually be fine. I'm interested in seeing if it does go smoothly, honestly. So we need him to reset now. Or actually right after Sify goes. So if Sify sleep, I could have manualed that, I think. I could have manualed that and been fine. If I would have slept sit with Sify, it would have been okay. But you guys saw the team. There you go. So the presets for this team, I did a video dedicated for this team actually a while back. So if you guys want to check that out, you can find it pretty easily on my channel, I do believe. But Godseeker's there. We have Newt here. We have Rio and then Prince Kymar. So for the builds on these champions, this is what I have going on. The Newt and Savage, very important. You already saw his speeds and his stats. There's that. And then his masteries over there. We have Sify. She's right here. She's pretty fast. She's like, well, you already saw her speeds. Then Kymar, you saw all of his stats over there. His masteries are right here. Just try to shoot for the stat numbers that I have. Rio, accuracy, speed, very important. She needs to be fast. If not, she will be rezzed after Newt and will go right after Newt, which is really weird for the Sand Devil, so do not do that. Make sure she is faster than Newt by a good margin. And then Godseeker, she's in 2 turns of Stone Skin, which is also very important because you don't want to die when the Sand Devil does that big swipe. So now, let me jump in here. Actually, no, before I do this, let's talk about stage 25, okay? Is stage 25 where all this stuff should be? To be honest, I wish it was spread out to these other stages as well. However, Sand Devil is pretty deceitful, or I guess tricky. It makes players think that they should start doing this much sooner than they actually should. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen players reach out to me for account help, asking for me to progress them in Sand Devil when they're not even progressing very high in these dungeons. So your upgrades from these dungeons are going to be far easier to get, far more plentiful, and far more significant when you're an earlier or mid-game player. So if that's you, don't worry about Sand Devil yet, because even though, yes, you can re-roll the Ascensions and get an extra 10% crit rate, some extra crit damage, all that kind of stuff, if the gear you're putting all this stuff on is mediocre at best gear, well, that gear is going to go from mediocre to good. When instead, you could just farm for good gear, keep that mediocre gear for your faction war champions, and then eventually work up to Sand Devil after you've farmed all this for a while, and once you start focusing on other areas of the game. I see this stuff as more of a guaranteed progression, whereas the Sand Devil and Shogun is a guaranteed progression in a sense, but you have to already have pretty good gear. So if you're somebody who is looking at this and feeling a little bit of FOMO, like a fear of missing out on something, don't worry about it. Focus on the other stuff and then invest in Sand Devil and Shogun heavily once you get there. But until you get there, don't worry about, oh, I should be farming Sand Devil right now. I don't have the best gear. If you're somebody struggling to hit 250 speed on your champions, you're probably not at the point where it makes sense to do Sand Devil and Shogun, just for an idea. Now, if you can do stage 25 pretty easily, yeah, it's worth investing some energy into it every now and then, but ultimately, your main gear upgrades are probably gonna come from dungeons, Savage on Fire Knight, Ice Golem, things like Curse, Reflex, and Provoke, all this kind of stuff, and then from the Forge, from Faction Wars, from Doom Tower, from Sinatros, the City of Sinterra, I don't know what it's called, the Cursed City, that is where a lot of your gear is gonna come from. So work on that, work towards that. But ultimately, I think stage 25 is a little bit low for the drop rates. 1 to 3 is kind of feels bad. I mean, I farmed over 100 Shogun earlier, and I think I ended with 37 powder, which I'd already gotten the free ones for the day, which I think was 20 maybe. So to be honest, it takes a long time to actually get the stuff. It's gonna take a long time grinding, and I had to do 8 reworks or more maybe on a pair of boots for Rio that did not go the way I wanted them to, which is a couple thousand energy invested into this, which is unfortunate. This pair of boots right now is at, let's see, we're at 6 rework attempts so far with no speed in sight. So as soon as I can get speed, that's gonna be amazing. But until then, each time I do this, I'm basically investing what was 100 energy into chaos dust farming into re-rolling or reworking this piece. So if you're somebody who's in a position like me, where I have a ton of gear that's not been ascended yet, I'm actually in a really good spot. I can go through ascend all this stuff, so farming Sand Devil is super valuable for me. But if you're a whale who's been farming Sand Devil really hard anyways for a long time, and now they implement this, now you have to farm it hard for a long time still, like again, that feels bad. That definitely feels bad. So I think it's in a way kind of unfortunate for those whales, but now for players like me who are in a spot where I didn't ascend all my gear, I was very careful. I wasn't farming too much of Sand Devil, to be honest, but now I'm going to farm it very hard because I can make sure, hey, this HP percentage boots, I want either more HP percentage, I want more speed, I want something along those lines. So ultimately, I think this change is for the best. I think that while, yes, it's going to make the Krakens get even better gear, the Krakens already had better gear, and they were just farming until their gear actually ascended the correct way. So while it will make a bigger gap between like the higher ends of the arena, the players who spend a lot of money and the players who spend a lot but still a little bit less, it's going to make a big gap between those players. I think it's going to make the players who are like, say, mid-game but able to do stage 25 of Sand Devil, maybe not mid-game, I guess it's going to be a little bit later game. The players who are able to farm stage 25 of Sand Devil don't have enough gear to make all the stat requirements for all the other areas of the game. Now they're able to come in here, do this farming, get the ascensions they actually need, push their PvP builds, push their PvE builds, especially for things like the Cursed City, things like the future clan boss that's coming over here possibly, things like that. Now they're going to be a little bit easier to actually hit those numbers. I was working on my Kaimar earlier, who had a flat HP banner, which the first reroll went to accuracy. So now, boom, I went from no accuracy as far as the reroll to an extra 24 accuracy with no problem. I literally just re-rolled it once, got lucky, and there it was. It was done. Rework attempt number 1. Same thing with my Mighty Uko. It was a flat defense or flat resistance, and now it's accuracy 24. Very nice. I mean, I can't complain about that stuff whatsoever, because that was accuracy that was just, I wish I could have gotten, but I wasn't able to actually get because of how my rolls actually went. But now I'm able to come in here, rework some speed, change out my Uko's build, boost his speed up a little bit more. So ultimately, this update is going to bring so much more potential for players who already are able to do stage 25. The players who are not quite able to, hopefully you're able to invest in some champions to actually get there. I do wish it was on 24 at least, because 24 and 25, it really comes down to just the champions you have and the affinities that you can work with on if you're actually able to do it. So it's unfortunate that stage 25 and 24 are not both able to give you dust, and I wish dust and powder was more than 1 to 3, maybe like 1 to 5 or 2 to 5 or something like that. But being accessible in lower stages is important. Getting a little bit more from the runs is important as well. But ultimately, I think this change, and better yet, the fact that you can continually rework pieces, is a tremendous change from Plarium. Honestly, I think it's going to more than make a gap between the top players bigger. I think it's going to take a gap for players like me and actually shrink it from the top players. Maybe I'm just crazy, but I feel like I have some champions that are pretty well geared, but now if I'm able to get the correct ascensions, these champions are going to be much more competitive. They're not still going to be anywhere close, but they're going to be more competitive than they were before. Like, well, Kaimar's kind of irrelevant for this example, but let's see my Rhodos. Like, he was, actually no. Yes, Rhodos. I think his stuff's all fine. His stuff all ascended fine anyways. It's Sun Wukong. I worked on getting his necklace, switched to crit damage. I think I did 5 rework attempts there. It took quite a bit, but I eventually got it to crit damage. So now he's going to be able to push about 300% crit damage just before I even get this blessing to 4-star, which is pretty cool because that's going to give me a lot of crit damage. He's built pretty well in my opinion, but ultimately, I think I'm a big fan of this change. I think it's a very solid change. I think that for the players, for the majority of players, this is a positive. I think players working towards this will eventually get it. I do wish it was on some lower stages, but ultimately, I think this was a good implementation from Plarium. I could see how the top ends of players, it may be a little bit more, I guess, concerning because now there's going to be an even bigger gap. However, like I said, there was already a big gap. Those players already had a massive advantage, and I don't think this is going to give tremendous levels of advantages like the levels of, hey, Taras and Marichka are added to the game. I think there's bigger things that could be changed to make the game more balanced, and I think this ultimately is going to bring, my opinion, more balance than imbalance to the game. And I think it's a very solid change for, like I said, majority of players. But guys, I want to know your opinions. Ultimately, this is just my thoughts, my opinions on day one of this stuff, and my investments into these two teams that are going to become my most important teams. Hopefully, I showed all the presets for this. I'm pretty sure I did. But these are my most important teams now, just flat out. I'm hoping to get Rio situated with her gear as soon as possible. Matter of fact, I should probably use the Rio that's actually booked versus the Rio that's not booked. So I'll probably change that out very soon. But this one's not booked or anything, and this other one actually is. So I'm probably going to change that very soon. Maybe even throw on, like, I don't know, Cruelty or something to get me a little bit more damage squeezed out from my Newt. Maybe help him out just a little bit. This is going to decrease the target's defense by 1%, so not going to do very much, but it's going to be something maybe. I don't know. But either way, guys, this has been a long enough video, my 15th try or more doing this. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate all of you guys. I want to hear your comments and your thoughts down below about this. I love you all, and I'll catch you in the next video.